Soft steps got their group almost to the end of the field before a sudden twitch of a vine put it right under their sword fighter's foot. And not only did Karl stomp on the vine, he tripped, and his blade sliced a dozen of them clean in half.
"Get him up and let's run! The vine monster will not be happy about that,"
Karl shouted before beginning to dash toward the relative safety of the hedgerow. The woodcutter hauled the other boy to his feet, and the four of them took off running, hoping to make it to the edge of the field. Entangling vines grabbed at Karl's legs, but fast steps kept them from finding a good hold, and he was nearly out of the vine's range before he was pulled to a stop. Coming up from behind him, the young mage used Karl's immobile figure as a springboard, running across his back as Karl was getting up and leaping toward safety, only to be caught in midair and dragged flat to the ground with a puff of dirt and a pained groan.
"Good plan. Poor execution."
The swordsman laughed from behind them as he hacked his way through the vines. Karl sliced himself free with rend, and then did the same for the mage, who frantically scrambled for safety in the trees. The last to reach safety was the woodcutter, but he was also the most lucky, as he had experience with entangling vines in the woods, and knew how to smack them with the back of his axe to keep them from grabbing his ankles.
"Sorry, it takes too long to explain the trick, or I would have told you all,"
he mumbled as he reached the trees a few seconds behind the others.
"It's all good. We each have our own knowledge base to work on, and there was no time for some long lecture in the middle of the field,"
Karl agreed. The mage seemed like she was about to say something, but then reconsidered. There were only a few seconds between the stumble and the escape. There really was no time to explain. All that was left now was a section of freshly mowed grass, with a single cobblestone path that led to the gates. If they could make it through that, they were safe. Well, relatively safe. From what they knew of the elites, the culture favored the strong, and they were not yet the strong. But they were all well suited to their class, and in time they might be.
"Stay off the grass. I learned that from my mom's workplace. Fancy people hate when you walk on their grass,"
the mage mumbled as they got ready to move.
"Good point. I was looking forward to soft grass under my feet after growing up in the mines, but using the path just seems right."
Karl agreed. These other three hadn't gotten on at his stop, but they should at least understand the concept of the mines. There were 10 other middle schoolers in the nearby towns, so even if, like Karl, they had never traveled, they had at least seen the mountains over the mines in the distance. Triumphantly, they walked down the path, with the woodcutter's son doing his best to hide a slight limp, and the mage brushing the dirt off the front of her uniform to look a little less like she had been rolling in the field for fun. They reached the gate, where a pair of teachers were waiting to greet them with a large bag full of textbooks.
"Welcome to the Golden Divine Academy, students Karl, Dana, James, and Kruger. You are the first to make it to the gate today, and therefore the first to get to pick your rooms in the dormitory. The map is on the table, and you may pick any room on the second floor that is not currently marked as occupied."
That's when the group also learned each other's names. With one slight nod to each other, they rushed over to collect a drink, and then gathered around the map.
"This layout makes no sense,"
Kruger, the axe wielder, mumbled.
"All the rooms are random. Look at this one. It's tiny, but with a huge empty balcony. Who would pick that?"
"Agreed," said Dana, the dark-haired mage. But a long, narrow room caught Dana's eye. There was supposed to be a training target at the end, which she could fire spells at from a distance, which would be great for practice.
"I want the balcony room."
Karl shrugged, then picked up a token from the table and placed it on the map.
"Right. You have a wide area attack skill. If you want to practice, you need more space. I'll take the training room here, with the Murphy bed that folds against the wall.
Dana explained, picking her space. The other two went for the largest pair of dorms, with a training dummy in the main room and a separate bedroom. Each of the rooms was a bit special in its own way, but Karl noticed that there was one selectable option that seemed quite inferior. Someone could actually pick the supply closet as their dorm. It was marked as an option, and it might be left to the last person to complete the trials. The Windspeed Hawk in Karl's taming space looked out through his eyes and squawked in appreciation of the choice. The big balcony was one of the few rooms that had proper outdoor access. In fact, it blocked a half-dozen other rooms' access to the outside, unless they had a window that opened onto the balcony. It was perfect for the bird, and once it digested these delicious earth mice, the tiny monster was convinced that it would have the energy to grow enough that it could fly around outside. Baby monsters didn't stay helpless for long, even in this situation, where it was being nourished by a human-beast tamer and not its mother.
Are there more mice?
It asked hopefully. It was strange to hear the bird's thoughts as words in his head, but unfortunately, Karl didn't have anything else for the beast right now.
Just wait until dinner and I will get you as much meat as you can eat,
Karl replied mentally.
I hope they serve mice.
The Windspeed Hawk thought eagerly. With the room distribution complete, the group walked towards the reception.
Interesting choices. I can see the others, but why did you pick the balcony? The room itself is barely a bedroom.
The teacher in charge of reception asked Karl.
I can always set something up on the balcony, but mostly it's for training. I have an area attack skill that I can't train indoors easily. But the room is fine. It's bigger than mine at home, and it's got both a bed and a desk with its own shower and bathroom,
Karl explained. The others quickly double-checked to make sure they had picked rooms with their own facilities and sighed in relief. Not only did the rooms they picked have a full bath, they also had a small kitchenette with a fridge and hot plate for cooking in the room while they were studying.
In that case, I will give you all your keys and wish you well in your studies.
The teacher's smile told them all that they had probably screwed up somehow, but they had no idea what they should have done differently in that situation. According to them, they had just picked the rooms that seemed the most appropriate for their class, or the biggest ones in the estimation of James and Kruger. They took a few steps, and students from the senior classes, wearing badges with white, black, and bronze symbols on them, fell in beside the group. White for common grade, black for awakened, and bronze for ascended, according to the text on the badges. The badges on the new students' uniforms were all white, so Karl hadn't noticed until now that they represented anything but the academy.
Welcome to the academy. We will show you to your rooms. It's always fun to see the newbies' first experience of the dorms, you see. It's a completely magical building, so whatever you were expecting, just put that out of your mind right now.
The student with the bronze badge, the strongest of the three, explained. They didn't say much more until they got to the main doors of the dorm.
On the right is the cafeteria, open from 4 in the morning until midnight. On the left are laundry facilities. They're a drop-off service. Just give them the basket and they'll launder it and bring it back to your room. This isn't a hotel. There are no maids. But the cleaning supplies are right here. Don't forget to keep your room clean. Everyone gets punished if too many students fail the dorm inspections. That way is the supply room. You can go visit him later when you have academy credits to get essential supplies and things you want for your room or your studies. Now, there is no elevator, but there are 3 staircases. The main ones are the best, as they're 5 meters wide and you don't get jammed up with cross traffic. Your year is lucky. You got rooms on the 2nd floor. Mine is up on the 4th floor, and these 2 are on the 5th floor. It's a long walk down to get to class, but I heard that the rooms are nicer at the top than they are on the lower floors.
The boy's smirk told Karl that he was definitely pranking them. Either there was an elevator, or the rooms were all strange, no matter where you went. The three older students put their hands on the shoulders of the newbies and led them up to the second floor with a smile.
You two are right here, since you picked the square internal rooms.
The leader of the senior students informed them, gesturing to the doors on either side of the stairs. That was a factor that they might have forgotten to consider. Being right next to the stairs could be loud. But the hallways were decorated with thick red carpets, hanging tapestries on the walls, and plenty of decorations that should prevent echoes. The two warriors opened their doors and looked at the bare rooms. Stone walls with multiple scorch marks, cut marks, and absolutely zero furniture in the main room greeted them. They stepped inside in shock and found that the bedroom had a simple single bed in it, unmade, but with quality linens and a comforter emblazoned with the school's crest folded at the foot. The main room had a stone golem standing in the middle, the training dummy that the diagram had informed them the room included, and the older students whistled in appreciation.
Now that's a nice bonus. They left you the training dummies from the last senior class. Those are commander class. You'll never break them in the first 2 years. Maybe not at all. I think it's a good trade-off for the initial cleaning you'll have to do.
The student with the black badge laughed. Karl gave them a suspicious look.
Are these just as the students left them, or is there some system to it?
The others just smirked and shrugged.
Why don't we let the others get settled in and see where you and the Mage are staying?
Dana sighed and gestured down the hallway.
If I remember the map right, I'm that way. Room 17, the long training one.
The student with the bronze badge nodded in appreciation.
I'm also a mage, so I picked the same room on my floor. Let's see what you got.
They opened the door and looked at an incredibly long hallway, far longer than the actual dimensions of the building should allow. But at the entrance was a small bedroom, restroom, and a kitchenette along the wall, followed by the vast stone expanse of the training hallway. It was spotlessly clean, and there was a single potion sitting on the table with a welcome note from the last occupant.
Congratulations, you got a decent senior. Check out your welcoming gift. We will get Karl here settled into his room.
The balcony room was just around the corner, and at first, Karl almost missed it. The supply closet room was right next to his, so the doors were narrow and very close together. But the older students knew which one it was.
Right here. Let's see what it's like. The balcony on our floor is empty. We didn't have as many students as you guys do, so some of them aren't in use.
The door swung open to show a very plain room past a short hallway with a bathroom on the left. The main room was just a metal desk and a large bed, trimmed in black leather with drawers underneath. The walls were painted dark gray, giving the room a very odd feeling. But the curtains were the Academy logo gold ones that presumably came with the room.
Well, this must have been the kitchen witch's room. Creepy goth girl. You can repaint once you get some credits to buy supplies. Good luck with that.
The gold badge student sighed, obviously disappointed that there wasn't anything special about the place. But they had forgotten the most important part. Once they left and the door closed behind them, Karl opened the curtains to the balcony and stepped outside, only to find himself in the middle of a greenhouse. There were plants everywhere, blocking his view, and Karl smiled. He had never had plants in the house before. His parents couldn't even keep flowers alive. But the Windspeed Hawk was overjoyed at the potted trees, flowers, and vines that were scattered all over the balcony. Karl didn't recall seeing this from the entryway.
and he should have, as they passed right under it on their way in. However, the more he walked, the more Karl realized that the balcony was not normal. It was at least 3 times the size that it should be, and nearly filled with plants, until he got to the far end and found a gazebo with a hammock, a curved bench, and a small table that contained a well-worn notebook.
Care and Keeping of the Balcony, abridged version.
Karl smiled at the title and flipped the notebook open.
While I don't know if you will appreciate the legacy of the greenhouse, you will find that it is effortless to care for, and every plant here has a purpose. You see, they are all edible. Most of them are for humans to help your growth, but I have personally added a few important ones of my own. This is the catnip plant. The feline-type magical beasts love it, and you can use it to keep them from reporting you when you sneak out at night. This one is the honeyberry, which is popular with bear-type monsters. If you smear the pulp of this plant on the shoes of other students, it will attract the giant grizzlies to them in the woods. Be sure to wash your hands before following. The final one is only edible in a limited quantity, the clear mind fruit. Use it before the major exams to help you focus. But keep in mind that it only works a few times, so use it sparingly.
The rest of the book was just a watering schedule for the plants, and a note that the magic of the balcony would take care of the rest. So the last resident planted a fruit to help her cheat on exams, one to sabotage other students in the woods, and a catnip to bribe the security so she could sneak out at night. This senior was definitely an interesting person, Karl decided. Karl was just getting settled into his room when his mind buzzed.
There are still no mice.
The baby Windspeed Hawk complained. He was right. Even with supervision, which could see into the infrared spectrum and would pick out urine trails of rodents, there was no sign of mice. That should have probably have been expected of a magical dorm, but it was a great tragedy in the mind of the bird. All right, buddy, we will go to the cafeteria and find some meat. Karl headed for the main floor again and made his way to the buffet of the cafeteria. New student? I don't know you. The old woman behind the counter asked. Yes, ma'am. My name is Karl. Polite. That's not bad. All right. Grab what you like, but only the white plates are allowed to be taken back to the rooms and must be returned during your next meal. Eat all you like. Magic affects all you kids differently. No need to be shy about your appetite.
Meat!
The hawk shouted happily in his mind, drawing his attention to a pile of raw fish set along one side of the long counter. It looked like a grocery section, where you could pick out your own ingredients to take to your room, while the first half of the counter was prepared dishes. Then, pardon my hunger, Karl replied, and took a pair of white plates to fill for their dinner. Pasta and meatballs with cream sauce, roasted pork, some sort of vegetable that gave off an incredible feeling of energy, and then an entire plate of raw meat for the hawk. Well, that's one of the more interesting plates for sure, but if you're in a room with a kitchen, you can cook it as you like. In the future, you can just ask the cook to prepare it if there's a special way you like your food, she explained. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind. Karl retreated to his room, while the hawk pleaded pitifully to be fed. If this was how adorably needy all baby birds were, no wonder their mothers would go to the extremes of even chewing food for them. Fortunately, the Windspeed Hawk had an extremely sharp metallic beak and could bite through bone with ease, even as a newborn. The meat chunks were all boneless, which the bird found disappointingly lacking in crunch. But the meat was all monster meat, high in nutrients and energy, and its body was growing at a visible rate under the pile of nourishment. It somehow managed to chew through 5 times its body weight in 10 minutes, and it was still pleading for the meatballs on Karl's plate as he finished his meal.
Fine, 1 meatball, but after that you need to wait for dinner,
When is that? I'm starving.
the bird complained, then burped loudly and fell asleep. That certainly didn't seem like starvation to Karl. By the time that it woke up, the Windspeed Hawk had grown to the size of a sparrow and was happily flying around Karl's mental space, an exuberant distraction as he cleaned the balcony of leaves, which were set aside to be sorted for drying, and then watered the plants. Everything here should be a magical resource of the most basic level, so even the leaves would likely be worth something if they were properly dried and preserved. The problem was that he wasn't sure if this garden was sanctioned by the school, or if they would view all the resources here as looted school property.
Is it dinner yet? We should get crunchy food this time.
Hawk suggested.
Sure, let's go down and see how everyone else is doing after I finish writing a letter.
The bird was confused by the concept of a letter, but Karl wanted to write home to his parents to let them know that he was all right and settling in well at the academy. The students wouldn't be home until the end of the school year, but he didn't recall any rule saying that he couldn't send a letter or a text message. Not that either Karl or his parents could afford a cell phone, but that wasn't the point. Maybe he would get them one once he was finished training and started to get the elite stipend. If it was enough, he could probably even move them out of the mines and let them retire. It only took a few minutes to finish the letter home, and Karl put it in the box by his door, which could be accessed from either the inside or the outside. That was where he had received and left the paperwork on the train, and it was where letters were picked up if you had to send them at home, so it should be the same here, Karl assumed. The dining hall was packed with new students, mostly in rather rough shape, with torn clothes, covered in mud and grass stains, and a few sporting visible injuries. Karl joined the line to grab dinner, then took a second plate, scooped an entire roast chicken on it, and transferred it to the beast taming space while nobody was watching him. Then he took another, added a collection of cheeses and snacks to it, and brought it to an empty table.
You are the gauntlet guy from the first group, aren't you? I didn't get a good look at your face earlier.
A girl with blonde hair and a heavily bruised face asked as he sat at the table next to hers.
Yeah, might I ask what happened? Everyone looks like they were beaten half to death.
Karl asked.
We were. I went with a group that understood going together for safety against the earth mice, and our lead warrior chased them off with a skill. But when we got to the second field, the plant monster was already going insane. So we thought it would be safer to go around, and we decided to try the tree line to the right.
She paused and gently touched her face, then flinched.
The one with the monstrous boars?
Karl asked.
Oh, you already know?
Karl nodded.
That's why we went through the field. I saw the marks of the boars on the trees and recognized them from outside the mining town where I grew up.
The girl laughed.
It's me, Jasmine. I guess you really didn't recognize me with my face like this.
That explained why she didn't introduce herself when she started speaking. Karl and Jasmine knew each other, so he should have already known it was her. Karl looked her over again. He was absolutely certain that when they left, the Jasmine that he knew had not been a blonde, and that she had been at least 20 kilos heavier than she was now.
You look different. It must be the hair,
Karl mumbled, not wanting to insult his classmate by mentioning what she used to look like. Maybe it was puberty, but he should have noticed a change like that. He was sure of it. There were a few other familiar, but also not familiar, faces in the crowd. It was like everyone was a bit different than he remembered, and most of them had improved in the best of ways. Come to think of it, he didn't remember sitting quite so tall at the table, and his uniform pants didn't quite reach his shoes anymore. That wasn't right. They definitely did this morning when he got off the train. Maybe his academy experience wasn't going to be a bad one after all. A little more height and he would catch up to his classmates.
Wait, that's not the end. You've just had a free taste. Now get the full story on the Pocket FM app, link in description. Check out our next video and playlist, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.